Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here. In this video we're talking about Nintendo Switch, 3DS, RetroArch, Perfect Dark, Bayonetta, and more. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off here talking about RetroArch, and RetroArch version 1.12.0 has just released, and we've got a whole bunch of changes. Now, I'm only going over these changes at a fairly high level. If you wanted to check them out in detail, I will drop a link to the entire changelog in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. So the very first thing in this update is a brand new feature that RetroArch is calling views, and it's basically a way to sort and organize your ROMs. You can do it by year, you can do it by publisher. Views are completely configurable, and RetroArch gives 3 different examples. Games made between 1992 and 1996 by developers Capcom, games supporting 5 to 8 players, and games containing Mario in the title released between 1988 and 1994. So you can see that this could be extremely helpful if you have a very big library. For RetroArch on Android, Vibrate on key press has been changed up considerably because it's now haptic feedback. And flipping over to Apple, if you're an iPhone user, the iOS ARM64 port has been completely revamped and targets iOS 13 and also has some new features. For example, a new toolbar on the top of the screen, and if you're on iOS 16, there's a brand new lock screen widget. In addition to that, RetroArch on the Wii U was also updated, and there's a whole bunch of bug fixes and minor improvements. If you wanted to read each individual one, I'll leave a link in the description below. Check it out. RetroArch is free, it's open source, and if you are using RetroArch, I do recommend picking up the latest version directly from RetroArch's website. Just head to retroarch.com, click on download, and pick it up from here. Even if you're on Android, I don't recommend picking it up from the Google Play Store. I recommend picking up the latest version directly from RetroArch's website. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation on PC with Yuzu, and Yuzu just released their progress report with a whole lot of great details in it. As always, I'll leave a link to it in the description below because we're just going over things at a high level, and there's a ton of information in here and it's very well written. The very first thing in this progress report is Project London, which we've talked about quite a bit on this channel, and that's open source online local wireless emulation. Basically, if you had a Switch and your friend had a Switch and you were sitting in the same room together, well, Yuzu kind of emulates that. Now, this feature is not available for every single game out there, and you will need a specific account in order to do so. I've covered this in a previous video, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. But anyways, here there are some lobbies set up. You can play some online multiplayer, and it is pretty fun. Now, one of the big takeaways here that I noticed right away is the future of Project London. They say at this point London is Yuzu to Yuzu only. However, they are working to include native Switch support for LDN sometime in the future, so that's Yuzu talking to an actual Switch and playing some multiplayer. This month there were also some OpenGL fixes for NVIDIA users. Here is the before with Dragon Quest Builders, and you can see the text is a little bit messed up and some things are pixelated. And here is the after, looking a lot smoother. And here's Snack World before, where things aren't even rendering correctly. And there's after. If you're a big Splatoon 2 fan and you're using the latest and greatest version of Yuzu, you might want to consider downgrading to mainline version 1190. Apparently there's some issues introduced in the latest versions with some updates that affect single player mode, specifically puzzles with Splatoon 2. Thanks to some work from Morph.hack, Last Recode is now bootable and playable. Thanks to a whole bunch of audio work this month, Dragon Quest X is now bootable. Homebrew stuff also improved with Yuzu. This is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, the 60 frames per second PC port thanks to the Ship of Harkinian up and running. There are some fixes in here that allows this game now to run. The Pokeball Plus controller is now partially supported. Not fully supported, but partially supported. And Amiibo support got a whole lot better here. It was fixed for games like Shovel Knight, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and more. Now, I've just covered these updates at a really high level, but there were still a whole bunch of improvements and a bunch of bug fixes that has made Yuzu even better. Yuzu is amazing, it's free, it's open source, and I do recommend it. In terms of which is better, Yuzu or Ryujinx, if you're playing Switch games on PC, I recommend checking out both. There's no harm in checking out both. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation on Android with Citra, just not the version that's on the Google Play Store. We're talking about Citra MMJ, the fork of Citra designed for performance as a post-emulation accuracy, where MMJ stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano. Citra MMJ just got a brand new update, and yes, it's back to being open source. Now this update to Citra is fairly minor, it's nothing earth-shattering, but if you're having issues with custom textures, you might want to check out the new version because apparently it's been fixed. If your Citra MMJ is working fine for you, you don't need to update it. Next up, this is a big one. We're talking about Perfect Dark. I'll leave this website in the description below, so feel free to check it out. Perfect Dark has been decompiled. That means a PC port of Perfect Dark might be on the horizon. And apparently it's fully legal because the entire game has been reverse engineered. So to be perfectly clear, this is Perfect Dark 64. It's available on GitLab and I will leave a link to it in the description below. Moving on now, and we're talking about Bayonetta 3 and we're starting to hear the other side of the story and things are not looking good for Helena Taylor. So earlier on we talked about Helena Taylor's viral tweets, the voice actor for Bayonetta 1 and 2. And apparently the studios only offered her $4,000 to voice Bayonetta for Bayonetta 3. However, that was only her side of the story, and apparently the studio is starting to fire back, and Jason Schreier has a series of tweets here that I don't want to say are damning, but man, they don't look good. Reportedly, Platinum Games offered Helena Taylor between $3,000 and $4,000 per session, not in total, for at least 5 sessions. Being conservative here, that's between 15 and 20K for about 20 hours of work, because apparently sessions are about 4 hours long. And Helena Taylor was looking for a 6-figure fee and residuals, and that's what caused negotiations to fall apart. Jason Schreier goes on to say that Helena Taylor completely denies this account, so it basically becomes their word versus her word, and you'll have to determine what word you think is true. So overall, my opinion on this situation is the exact same. As I said in my previous video, I am still not sure what to make of this situation. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Who's telling the truth and who's lying? Moving on, and we're talking about Xbox controllers, specifically the Elite Series 2, and specifically customizing it. Xbox Design Lab now has the Elite Series 2 up for customization if you want to customize your own. While these controllers are awesome, they're not cheap. They start at about $150 overall, and you can configure a whole bunch of stuff about them. You just can't change the color of the hand grips, which is a little bit of a bummer. I mean, you can make these controllers look pretty cool, you can make them look crazy, but you can't change those grips, which I don't know why. Now, if Xbox controllers aren't your thing and you like the DualSense controller more and you'd want to spend $200 as opposed to $150, well, I've got some great news for you. The brand new DualSense Edge wireless controller for the PS5 will launch globally on January 26th. And pre-orders open up October 25th, so just next week. We talked about the DualSense Edge a while back, but it's basically PlayStation's version of the Elite controller. If you want to learn more about it, I'll drop a link to this blog in the description below. Feel free to check it out. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a ton today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos, don't tempt fate, save your state.